Good morning, everyone. Hi. Thanks for joining us. This is the fifth Think Good, and lovely to see so many of you here. So the whole focus today is towards a new horizon. Obviously, things have changed dramatically in recent months. What we're going to talk about today is content talking and content marketing in a changed world. So is content still king? We're going to do a quick poll here to see how many of you think it is. If you look at the bottom of your screen, or the top, you should see poll. You click on there, and there's the question, is content still king? So if you can just say yes, no, or you don't know, that would be great. Let's see what we all think. So definitely the majority think it is, and quite a few of you don't really know, which is good, so hopefully you're going to learn something today. So 2/3 of you say yes, content is king, and 1/3 of you don't know. Out of interest, do any of you know who said this famous saying, is content is king? You can do a reaction if you want, the thumbs up if you know whether who said it. Somebody quite well known. It was Bill Gates. And he actually said this in an essay that he wrote on Microsoft website in 1996. So that's 24 years ago, which indicates what a visionary he is and how he could see how things would work. So he said one of the exciting things about the internet is that anyone can publish content. And he likened the internet to a giant photocopier that allows you to duplicate content, spread it worldwide at very little cost. He said the opportunities are remarkable. And I think that's all come true in the last 24 years, and the opportunities are still remarkable.
Okay, so that was Bill Gates. There are links in this presentation to sources throughout. So if you want the presentation afterwards, I'll happily share it, and then you can click through to the links to get to those sources yourselves. So what is content marketing exactly? I find these days so many terms are used interchangeably between digital marketing and online marketing, social media marketing, and it can be quite confusing about what exactly is content marketing. Well, the definition is a bit long-winded. This is from the Content Marketing Institute, but they talk about taking a strategic marketing approach. It's a marketing discipline, and using content to attract and to retain a clearly defined audience, and ultimately to drive profitable customer action. For a non-profit, that might be donor action or volunteer action. So that's the official definition. So what content is your non-profit currently using? We're going to do another poll here. So go up or down to your poll, and let's see what types of content you're already using in your organisation. It says email newsletters, blogs, case studies, video content, podcasts, social media, infographics, and other. So this is interesting. 96% of you that reply, that's 80% of you are using email newsletters. Only about 1/3 have got a blog. 62% are using video, which is great. Not one single one of you are using podcasts. And that is a type of content that is growing dramatically, particularly in this this coronavirus world. 92% of you are on social media, and 1/3 of you are using other types. Very interesting and not unexpected. So here's a list of content formats. I've taken this off Growth Hackers. It was quite a good infographic. It's very long. We don't have to go through all the different types here. I think what I really wanted to illustrate is there is a vast array of different types of content that's out there, from videos to podcasts to webinars to white papers. And something that online doesn't go into detail too much, but it's still a form of content, is your printed materials, your annual reports, your brochures. That's also content. So there is a huge variety of different types of content. For example, this is just a very simple example. If you're doing peer-to-peer fundraising, some of the content formats that you might choose to give to your fundraisers are branded giving pages, so that they can set up a page for their friends to support them that is branded with your organisation. You might give them social media posts talking about the cause that they're raising funds for. You might give them an email template, images and infographics. If they're doing a raise for you, you might give them branded clothing or signage to wear. So that's just an example of how you would apply the relevant content formats to the situation. What do you guys think is the most popular form of content? You can answer in the chat, I think. It's quite interesting. When I was looking into this, I thought that video would be the most popular form of content, but actually, according to Campaign Monitor, who surveyed 500 nonprofits and 1,000 donors, 42% of donors actually still prefer to hear from your organisation through email, that direct contact to them. So even though it's always predicted that email is going to fall away, it's still incredibly popular, and it seems to be a content format that people like to receive information through. So we've looked at different content formats, looked at what content marketing is, but really why you're all here today is how can content marketing benefit your organisation? There are 4 key ways. One, and this is the most obvious, it's awareness. It's raising awareness about your organisation, profiling you, giving details about what work you do. Awareness raising is obviously very, very valuable. It's beyond awareness raising, and I think this is something that organisations might not incorporate, because often content marketing ends up in the marketing department. But your content is a hugely powerful tool in terms of educating, informing and empowering your beneficiaries or your service users. If you're a mental health organisation, providing tools and resources for people affected by mental disabilities is incredibly useful. Giving them advocacy tools so that they can have their voices heard. Don't underestimate the power of content to educate, inform and empower and mobilise people. It's a very important part of attracting volunteers to your organisation, and also once you've got them, retaining them. Content's ultimately about building relationships. So content marketing can be a really useful approach when it comes to volunteer management. And the big one, which most of you I'm sure want to know about, is can content marketing help you raise money? So that I pulled together some stats from out there on raising funds and content marketing. Apparently these are mainly US figures, but 62% of donors are going to research online your organisation before they give. Having an up-to-date website that's giving the type of information they're looking for is really, really important in terms of raising funds. 2/3 of donors will give more money if they understand the impact that that money is going to make. This is where your case histories and your success stories are so, so important. Let your donors know about the impact that you're making with the money they're giving you, or the resources they're giving you. 75% of donors will give more if there's a compelling reason. I think in this coronavirus pandemic, we've seen that. There's a compelling reason to give money towards soup kitchens and feeding programs where so many people have lost work and are literally going hungry. And you can see people opening their hearts and opening their wallets. So it's really, when you're putting together your content, identify, what's the impact you're making, what's a compelling reason for people to give. Make sure those things are very, very clear. Some more stats. Apparently, branded, designed donation pages, rather than a generic page on a giving website, will raise up to 6 times more money. So it's worth investing in a beautiful giving page on your own website. Make it so easy for your donors to give to you. This was really interesting from Network for Good. It was looking at the one thing that a non-profit can do to keep donors engaged and interested in donating to their cause. And the top thing was transparency and a proper use of donations. Again, that's part of making sure that where your funds go and how they're spent is clear on your various pieces of content. The second most important thing was communicating about your current work and your success stories. These are the things that keep people interested. What was also very interesting is the things that don't really matter to donors. Only 4% felt it was important that you show appreciation to them. And that surprised me. I would have thought that donors would have wanted a lot more in terms of being thanked. But it seems that they rather want to know the money's making a difference than be thanked profusely. And also only 4% of people said that they wanted limited communication. We might think we don't want to over-communicate or flood our donors or volunteers with news. But it seems that that's not such an important thing. If they're giving to you, they're interested in what you are doing. 59% of donors want to know how the money is used. And this is another interesting stat. 59% of donors said they like knowing how much money has been raised towards the goal. And often we set these targets and we run these campaigns, but we don't necessarily always show how far we're doing, particularly if we're not quite getting to where we want to be. But it does seem that donors want to know. They want to see what's really, really happening. So we've looked at why content marketing can be beneficial and how it can benefit your organization. Now we're going to look at how to make content marketing work for you. So we're going to do another poll. Does your NPO have a content strategy? Oh, we've got a different poll going here about content audit. Megan's on tech, and okay, we'll go with this content audit poll. Let's do it, because this is also part of strategy. So when did your organization last do a content audit? If you don't know what a content audit is, just say no idea. Okay, so in terms of content audit, it seems that almost a third of you have done a content audit this year, which is good to see, or last, and 13% last year. And more than half of you have no idea whether your organization has ever done a content audit. We're going to look more at this further down. So, does your NPO have a content strategy or not? I don't know if there is a poll there. We'll just check. I don't think so. Okay. Oh, here we go. Does your organization have a content strategy or plan? If you don't know, just click I don't know whether you have a strategy or plan. So 50%, half of your organizations do have a content strategy or plan. Hopefully you're going to learn a couple of things today that might improve it. 38% of you don't, and 12% of you don't know. So let's look at what in a content strategy. Oh, before we go into the detail of the content strategy, I want to touch on something about the audience journey, which we don't really have time to go into depth in today. But it's just to understand that there may be different types of content that are appropriate for your donors or your volunteers at different stages in their relationship with you. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the inbound marketing methodology. This has been championed by an organization called HubSpot. I really rate the courses and the information that they share. There's a link down there, hubspot.com. They've got certification courses on content marketing and all kinds of marketing, and they're really good quality, up to date. So I really recommend that you visit HubSpot Academy and perhaps sign up for some of those courses. But their whole approach to marketing is based on this inbound methodology, which is that people are coming towards you and they're interested in you, rather than the traditional outbound where you're pushing out adverts and pushing out information and hoping someone picks it up. And in some ways, non-profit organizations, you know, you're not selling shoes necessarily. People aren't looking for the latest running shoe and they're busy Googling, but they may be looking for a cause to support, or they may be watching news and get a link to something else. They're on social media, they're seeing what their friends are doing. They might see their friends doing a race and want to come and find out more about the organisation. So people are out there and they are hopefully coming across your course. So just a very simple snapshot. This whole inbound has different stages, and the type of content that you're going to use at these different stages varies. So you start off with strangers who don't know you at all. And they may come into contact with you and they become visitors. From there, you can hopefully shift them across to becoming supportive, where you start communicating and engaging with them more. From supporting you, they're going to hopefully become donors. You can give them even more detailed communication, maybe have more face-to-face with them. And right at the end, the ultimate in terms of your donors and your volunteers, you want them to become your promoters, your brand advocates. You want them to be out there spreading the word about the work that you are doing. So if you understand this kind of flow, it definitely will help you in putting together your content strategy and plan, and just making sure that you are doing appropriate content for the stage of where your donors or volunteers or people are. This was quite a handy diagram on Volunteer Pro. It's just demonstrating how you can shift people up the pyramid or through the journey and the different types of content. This is completely focused on volunteers. We don't need to go into the detail of this here. There isn't really time, but I'll put a link in there so you can go and look at that in more detail if you want to. So we're looking at a 7-step content strategy. And you can go through starting with content audit. We've done the poll around the content audit, and about a third of you have done a content audit this year, and more than half of you have no idea if your organisation ever done a content audit. What is a content audit? That's looking at the content that you've got out there right now. It's looking at how your website's working, going into Google Analytics or whatever analytics tool you're using, seeing who's visiting your site, where are they spending time, what's their behaviour on the site, who is that audience, looking at your social media, any printed content you've got out there, basically assessing everything that you have and seeing how it's being interacted with, used, is it up to date. You also assess it, is it on track in terms of who your organisation is, the messages that you want to put out there now, is it up to date? This is a very useful thing to do. It's recommended that you do this 2 to 4 times a year, because if you're not measuring and auditing and seeing where things are, you're not going to change them if they're not working, or you can do more of them if they are working really well. Also, non-profits, your budgets are always extremely tight, whether it's time or money. And doing an audit can help you invest in the things that are working the most effectively, rather than investing in things that aren't working at all. So it's recommended that you do a content audit several times a year, which I don't think most of you are doing. And if you Google online doing a content audit, you'll find lots of simple ways of plans and things to follow. So the second part of your content strategy is setting goals and objectives. I just wanted to highlight that your content goals and your content objectives need to speak to your organization's mission and vision. That's what ultimately should inform everything that you're doing. So just have that always in mind. What are you there? What is the purpose of your organization? And your goals and your objectives should stem from that. And when you're setting your objectives, I love this acronym, SMART Objectives. It really helps me go back and make sure that I put those elements in, that they are specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, realistic, and time-bound. For example, a content goal might be to increase your email subscribers by 1,000 before the end of this year. The third element in your content strategy is looking at your audiences. And this will vary depending on what your mission and your goals are. It may be donors, and with all of these audiences, particularly for non-profit, you're not just looking at your present donors, you're looking at your past donors who maybe have lapsed, and potential donors who you want to reach. Your audience might be volunteers. Often volunteers and donors overlap, and your volunteers become donors. Another audience are your employees, particularly in this world where there is less contact, people are working more remotely. Content can be a really valuable way of keeping in contact with your employees and keeping them inspired. And another audience, it may be your beneficiaries and service users. The thing about listing these audiences is you cannot put enough detail down, really. You want to get to know them so well. You're looking at the demographics, that's things like their age, their gender, where they live, their degree of education. You're looking at the psychographics. What are their pain points? What interests them? You're looking at their media habits. Where are they online? How will that come across your organisation? And ultimately, the ideal would be to build a persona for your target audience. This is an example of a donor persona, which is on the Kindful website. And you can see the level of detail here. So this Michelle Gibson could even be an imaginary person, but she's based on research that you will do on who your donors are. And you will come up with, all your volunteers, you'll come up with a typical person and their sex, their age, where they live, their communication style. Here you can see they've unpacked the goals, what's motivating her to be involved, what issues is she concerned about, common objections to giving. So getting to know your donors and having a persona of who they are. So you almost, when you're writing for your donors, you're thinking about Michelle when you're writing it. You're actually trying to speak to her. So when you're looking at your target audience, it's looking at the fourth part of your content strategy is the cause, your organisation. What's your mission and vision? What are your values? What's your strength, your weaknesses? What opportunities and threats are there? Something really, really important is identifying your USPs. What is unique about your organisation? There are hundreds of thousands of non-profits in South Africa. What are you doing that's different? What's special? What do you own? If you can highlight those, even if it's one or two things, they can be used in most of your content, just reinforcing constantly what's special and unique about your organisation. What do you do that no one else is doing? Unpacking the key messages, and this will very much tie to mission and vision and your goals. What are you trying to say about your organisation, about the work you're doing, about the impact you're making? What are those key messages? You also want to go into detail about what's the personality of your organisation. Are you serious? Are you medical? Are you professional? Are you woman-friendly? Are you cool? Spell that out. Have that detailed in your kind of brand style guide. What tone of voice do you use when you're communicating with your audiences? It might be a slightly different tone depending on which platform or format you're using. But what is the tone of voice of your organisation? And then also, what does your logo look like? What colours are you using? What fonts do you use? What does your brand stand for? Get all of that information down, have it available to anyone that's creating content for you across the board so that you develop this consistency in your content. Repetition is so, so important. You keep repeating the same messages. And also, something that's really important to remember now is that people source information from such a variety of sources. You need to be consistent and recognizable when they keep coming across you in those different places. Don't have a Facebook page that's looking completely different to your YouTube channel or your annual report or your website. So a key part, and you'll hear this mentioned a lot in content marketing, are your content pillars. The part of defining your organisation, your cause, is also defining what are the content pillars. What are you going to focus on? I think you see often on social media and other places, people are kind of all over the place. They're talking about all kinds of things. They jump onto every public holiday and celebration because they're just desperate to find something to talk about. But if you focus in on 2 or 3 key areas of interest that you focus on, you'll start being seen as an authority in that area. So, for example, with the Cape Town International Kite Festival that I work on, our content pillars are kites. Obviously, it's a kite festival, and Cape Town, because it's hosted in Cape Town. It's an international event happening in Cape Town, and mental health, because it's all about mental health. It's the beneficiary and the host of the organisation is Cape Mental Health. So our content pillars are kites, Cape Town, and mental health. And we don't talk about other things on the social media. We focus in on those things, and we focus well. So identify what are the content pillars, what are the key aspects of your organisation that you're trying to communicate. When you're looking at your organisation, the other thing you also should be looking at are what resources do you have available for your content. So that is looking at what team is there, and it may be staff, it may be volunteers, it may be people in different departments that are doing different elements of it. It might be writers, graphic designers, video creators, social media creators, it may be agencies or freelancers that you use, but what team do you have available? How much time do you have available to put into your content creation, content planning? What skills do you have? What tools and technology do you have? And what might you need? And what's the budget for that? And budget's a huge issue. Content does cost. It takes time, it takes skills. But you can't plan to do a weekly podcast if you don't have someone who can speak well about what you're doing. You don't have the platform, you don't have the tools. Video content can be expensive. There are also some cheap ways of creating that. I think Jennifer is going to be talking more about what ways of creating content in an affordable way in her session about repurposing content later. But look at what resources you have. And then you've looked at your cause, you've looked at what you're trying to achieve, you've looked at who's available to help that. You need to bounce around some ideas. So here's a question which I think you can answer in the chat. How does your organisation get content ideas? What do you do to find ideas for your social media and your emailers and your other content that you're creating? Are you able to reply on chat?
So it's a good question. Can everyone see the chat box? If you go your mouse down the bottom of the screen, in the middle you'll see where it says chat. Click on that and the chat box should pop up. And then if you've got, just type in your answers there. You'll see you can click onto it. Once it pops up, there we go.
So if you can just share how you...
First one coming up says get feedback from staff and volunteers.
Nice.
The other one is our content is mainly based on the training we offer. So a newsletter and upcoming training and Zoom recordings of training completed. It's a lot of work. Elisa's saying we curate and design our own content if possible. Sure, they're coming in. Possible newsletter promoting awareness. The next one is Kelvin says one should have a quarterly and monthly content plan. Yeah. Jacques, we have about so content about events at school, both academic and sport. Okay. Chantel saying, how do you get more people to open a newsletter? It's a good question. Ramona is saying coffee clubs, seems to be in terms of sharing and content and gathering information. Cathy Kids Haven says our content is a mix of what we've been doing and what we expect to be doing with the beneficiaries. We try to link with pertinent issues. So in the past 5 months, everything has been linked to COVID-19, which, yeah. Felicity is saying we post videos of interventions done on Facebook and Instagram. We send out a regular 2-page newsletter to our donors as an update on our outreach projects. Wow.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
People want to see how things are working. And also what Kids Haven is saying is about linking to pertinent issues. That's very true. People want to to know what's going on at the moment and see that you're still relevant, but not if it's not natural. If you're not actually doing anything linked to whatever has come up into the news, don't try and be that. Remember your content pillars.
Awesome.
You know, these are really, really nice content ideas.
Yeah.
Often there's some other ways of getting ideas for your content. I mean, if you are busy on social media and you're doing 3 posts a week, for example, which is a kind of good thing to aim for. I mean, a lot of corporates post multiple times a day. I don't know many non-profits that have got that capacity. But you need a lot of ideas to keep things going, and some ways that you can find ideas, obviously having a brainstorm. I loved what some of you were saying about coffee clubs, getting together with your donors and your volunteers, also with your staff, talking to people in your team who are in the field. You know, what's coming up, what issues are they seeing, what's concerning your beneficiaries. Those are all really nice ideas, ways of finding ideas. Google can be an enormously helpful friend when you're looking for content ideas. If you search on your topic, whether it's soup kitchens or mental health issues or animal welfare, type that into the Google search bar and see what questions are being asked. You get that list of what people are asking about that thing. Those are the most common searches on that topic. So that's a great way of finding out what questions people are asking about that issue. If your content answers questions, you find that people find it useful. Ultimately, you're trying to solve people's problems with your content. So that's just some ways of getting content ideas. Oh, this I thought was an interesting fact in terms of your content. That 59% of donors would rather hear from an individual, a person within the organisation, than just a brand. And I think very often we talk as the organisation and we are hesitant to profile a person, but it does seem that people like to hear from people. So developing some key staff members or volunteers or beneficiaries or service users that get profiled and using their voice can be a very powerful way of getting your message across in your content. So the next part, you've got all these ideas, you've got the core elements of what you want to achieve, your goals and objectives. But now you need to put it into a content plan and how to do that. For me, I'm quite a structured person, and I've always found looking at the year ahead, whether it's a calendar year or a financial year, whatever works for your organisation, put that together, plug into that calendar key dates of what's happening in your organisation. Are you having events? Are you having trainings? Are there any milestones coming up, like an anniversary or an AGM? Plug all of those into your calendar. And then are there specific themes that come up? If you are a homeless organisation, obviously winter is a really important time because people are very conscious of how cold people are when they don't have a home. So you might tie in a winter theme. So put topical seasonal things in there if they are relevant to your organisation and your content pillars. Look at what's happening in your audience's worlds in this year ahead. Is there, if you're a sporting organisation, are the Olympics happening? Is there a World Cup of some kind? Is there a big election happening? Plug those things in so you're aware of them. Are there topical days that are relevant to your organisation? There's quite a few in the calendar that tend to affect a lot of organisations, such as Mandela Day in July. December is traditionally a very popular time for giving, and you might plan a December campaign. There's Volunteer Day, there may be a health day that's relevant to your cause. So plug all of those in, and then you start developing from that calendar when you're going to run certain things. So you start identifying what campaigns you're going to run when. You can see where there seems to be too much happening, so you can decide which is the priority campaign for that month or that quarter, and start filtering through and list the types of content you're going to put in there. So it's called an editorial calendar or a content calendar, and that would be the core element of your content plan. You also want to look at how you're going to produce this content. The production process, that's going to vary a lot depending on what type of content you're creating, if it's video or podcast, if it's email newsletters. But detail who are the people, who are the role players that are involved, what are the time frames that they need to work on something, so that you can build all of that in. People can be briefed by a certain time, they can get on to deliver by a certain time. So in your content plan, you're going to detail the production aspect. I thought this was an interesting slide, again on HubSpot, and this is looking at the content strategy video production process. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, but I think it highlights really well how many steps are involved in producing content and how many people might be involved. And this is why planning is so, so important, that you can factor in time to allow all of these. A big thing in non-profits that I find can slow things down and really disrupt the delivery is the approval process. You should have approval processes detailed for your organization. You should know exactly who needs to sign off at which stage with every piece of content. Allow time for that, and get commitment also from those people that are approving that they will turn it around in X amount of time. Find out how long they need to approve something, put that into your content plan so that you don't get caught out that way. Another crucial part of your content strategy is how you're going to distribute your content. I think Jennifer is going to talk a lot more about this later in her session on repurposing content. But you can invest so much time, energy and resources into developing content, but then if there's no distribution plan, it's just not going to help you reach your goals in the way it could. You might just not make the most of that content's potential. So in your content plan, you're going to include how you're going to distribute your content. I have got a PR background, traditional media relations, and I love this organization called Spin Sucks, which talks about spin and how things have changed. And they have this, they call it the Peso model, which talks about different types of content and how you distribute it. And this is quite useful when you're thinking about how you're going to distribute your content. You have your paid media. This is things that you pay for, obviously, like sponsored posts or tweets, that type of thing. You have your earned media. That's where other people are talking about you, and that could be from your media relations, influencers, bloggers, news. You have your shared media, which is if you've partnered with an organization, and this is a great opportunity in these days where traditional media is less valuable, often partnering with an organization or a company can help you really reach new audiences very cost effectively and can also benefit whoever you partnered with. So don't just see it about getting money or donations from partners. Look at how they can help amplify your message and amplify your content. And then the biggie is your owned media. These are the channels that your organization owns, your social media platforms, your website, things that you create. It could be webinars, podcasts, videos, how-to guides, all of that. So think about what channels you are trying to use with your content and have a distribution strategy. The last step in your content strategy, that's step 7, and this is so important, is analyzing it. And in order to do that, you need to measure how well it's working. Some of the metrics that you might be measuring, and this will obviously vary depending on what content formats you're using and what your goals are. But it might be website visitors, how many visitors you're getting to your website, how long they're spending on there, what they do when they get there. It might be engagement on social media, if people are liking, sharing or commenting or mentioning you. That's another metric to measure. Could be your SEO results, which is how much organic traffic you're getting. Backlinks, that's when other people are crediting your website in their platforms. And leads and revenues, or donations received, or volunteer sign-ups, or email subscribers. When you set your goals and objectives, it's really, really important to identify how you're going to measure and evaluate the success of your content, and do that regularly, every quarter. Look at how it's working. If it's not working, the beauty of a lot of this content, particularly the online content, is you can change it. You can tweak it, you can do more of what's working and less of what's not. This was pulled from SEMrush. They have some really good resources. They've got a very nice content marketing strategy guide, which is worth looking at. So that is your 7 steps and putting together a content strategy. And here's just 7 C's of great content. You might think of some other things, but when you're putting your content together, you want it to be clear. What's the message you're trying to get across? It needs to be credible. And credibility is actually another benefit of content marketing. The content you put out there really can help build trust and credibility in your organization. And there have been quite a lot of scams and controversies around nonprofits in recent times. Building your credibility and trust is so crucial. Being consistent across all your channels and platforms is important. Great content connects you. It builds that relationship. It's compelling. It's current, and it's clear again. Oh, clear's repeated, so that must be very important. Here are some resources that you might find useful. There's the Content Marketing Institute. They've got a whole section on coronavirus content marketing, and they've got some 36 questions to answer when you're developing your content strategy. There's also if you want to learn more, there are some really good courses available. We talked about HubSpot already. Neil Patel, he's not non-profit focused, but he has excellent, he's got a good podcast, he's got really useful information, and the Copy Blogger. And then Google Digital Garage is free, and they've got a section on content. They've also got a section on digital marketing. So those are some resources that will help you learn more. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for listening today, and special thanks to Malcolm, who's hosted us, and Megan, who's behind the scenes doing all the tech. She's from Mindspring Computing, and they've been so helpful. So thank you to you, and thanks to Malcolm and Megan.